So as I say, welcome everyone to our last session on craft typologies. And it's my great pleasure to introduce the first of our speakers tonight, Beth Wilson, who I was just rejoicing in the fact that we're only about 20 miles apart. I'm on the mainland, she's on the island, but she's starting our conversation about typologies to think about the important impact of Tweed, produced on the island of Harris for generations, but also very much part of contemporary making. And I think it's that mixture of her own work as a woven textile designer and that partnership with knowledge transfer that I hope she's going to share with us with her work with the Robert Gordon University as well. So thank you so much, Beth. I'll just pop your slide up and we look very much forward to hearing about your researches.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah, so I'm relatively recent to the Isle of Lewis. I moved here about a year ago. I'm currently undertaking, as Claire said, a knowledge transfer partnership, which is a government scheme that supports different sectors to innovate and progress businesses in the UK. So the role I'm in is an innovation role, and I'm based at a company called Harris Tweed Hebrides in partnership with RGU University in Aberdeen. Harris Tweed Hebrides is one of the 3 mills on the island which all produce Harris Tweed. And Harris Tweed Hebrides works very closely with around about 200 self-employed Harris Tweed home weavers. So the mill is a vertical mill, meaning it's able to process wool from fibre form all the way through to finished fabric. And that's really important because it's a requirement for the Harris Tweed Act. All fabric be made, fully made and finished on the west or in the Western Isles. So the Harris Tweed Act was established in 1993. Officially, there was always rules around how Harris Tweed was made prior to that, but it was made officially legal in 1993. And as that came about, also something called the Harris Tweed Authority also came about. And they're essentially like the protectors of Harris Tweed on the island. So they're an independent body set up that aren't linked to any of the weavers or the mills. They're there to support everyone equally. And they will also step in if there are any legal issues in terms of somebody selling something that isn't Harris Tweed, maybe further out in the wider world. So they keep a register of all the weavers on the island. If you want to be a Harris Tweed weaver, you have to be registered with them. And they also do a lot of advertising for the whole industry as well. So if you're an independent weaver, they will advertise you equally as much as they would if you were one of the mills on the island. So for the purposes of this, I was interested to find out what the definition of a tweed is. And for the purposes of Google, they provided a rough surfaced woolen cloth, typically of mixed flecked colours, originally produced in Scotland, which I would absolutely agree with. So the key defining feature of tweed that I've worked with before and here is that it's a colour mixture of fibre. So lots of different solid colours mixed together in fibre form that then is produced into a tweed yarn. So if you hold a magnifying glass over a piece of tweed fabric, you will be able to see a range of colours that are included in what looks like a single colour to the naked eye, which is part of the magic of what tweed is. So as I've said, Harris Tweed is the only fabric in the world protected by an Act of Parliament. This protects the brand, the fabric, the industry, and the skilled craftspeople who work in each different part of the process in the creation of Harris Tweed. It stipulates the rules and requirements of the process and the fabric to achieve the Harris Tweed certification. This is provided in a stamp form. So if you meet all the requirements and all the paperwork is in place, the Harris Tweed Authority issue a stamp to the back of the fabric. So it's a beeswax stamp that goes on the back of the fabric and is ironed on at intervals along the length of the fabric. And without that stamp, it cannot be called or sold as Harris Tweed. So in terms of the industry itself, it would be easy to imagine a singular weaver in their shed in the beautiful Outer Hebrides, but the truth is Harris Tweed is so much more. A talented team of craftsmen and women who have shared artisanal skills down through the generations. Upon arriving on the Isle of Lewis and Harris just over a year ago, it was evident from the offset that this unique part of the UK textile industry was a community of skills, of craft, of friends and family, and furthermore, a way of life. It stands that most people today might have a singular job role in a company or business, but here in the Western Isles, the Harris Tweed industry supports a variety of lifestyles, including parenting, crofters, part-time, full-time work, offering a variety of flexible working opportunities. It's rare here to find a full-time weaver. Many weave early in the morning or late at night, choosing hours that fit around other part-time jobs, and most commonly crofting. Traditionally, crofting, and particularly the crofting of sheep on the island, supplied the industry with the wool required to produce the Harris Tweed. However, today the volume and requirements are such that wool is sourced from further afield to meet demand. This wool is all of British origin, which is important to note. So although we maybe don't source the wool from the island anymore, it is important to the brand, the company, and the heritage of what we make and the tweed that we produce, to keep our sourcing as local and British as possible, which keeps the story A, sustainable, because you're not shipping wool from all over the world, and B, British, and the story British, even though ideally it would be great to have wool from the islands, but unfortunately there's supporting so many weavers and producing so much tweed now that it's just not sustainable with the amount of sheep on the island. Craftspeople across the Harris Tweed industry have shared and passed down their knowledge and skills across the cottage industry production process. Arguably the most famous of these craftspeople is the Harris Tweed weaver. With the Outer Hebrides supporting largely an ageing population, island weavers have years of experience under their belt. They're located in their homes or nearby in weave sheds. These come in a variety of forms, including new builds and very basic traditional outbuildings. I had the opportunity to go and meet some of the weavers more recently due to COVID, and got to go in the van with some of the guys. So the mill has vans and lorries that go around the island, and the warps are dropped off on metal beams. So they're super heavy, and the guys go around the island and they drop off full beams and pick up empty beams and take back the woven cloth. So I got to go do the Harris run. So there was only 6 weavers' sheds that we visited that day. And as we went round, so some people were in, some people weren't. Nobody locks their doors here. So sometimes we just went into sheds and dropped things off, and other times there were weavers there to greet us. So as we dropped off some and picked up others, I could see the difference in some people's new build weave sheds where they were set up with their TVs and they could pedal away, and other people who were more traditional with their stone built kind of outbuilding, and they cycled in there with their radios and pedaled the loom that way. So, however, the most famous part of the process, the craftsperson called the weaver, ultimately remains anonymous, unseen by the consumer. So although they are the most famous person in the chain, ultimately they're still a faceless person by the time the fabric gets to the end consumer. So a lot of the industry in the UK, woven textiles, are mechanically powered machines and looms. So some people, unless you were interested in the crafting history, might not know that all of the tweed woven in Harris and Lewis is woven by hand. The same can be said for other roles within the industry. The lesser spoken about craftspeople include dyers, blending operatives, carders, spinners, warpers, darners, and finishing operatives, all playing a crucial role in the production of Harris tweed, each as important as the next. These skilled workers are at the heart of Harris tweed. They take the wool from fibre and dye 60 solid base colours. That's the amount we have at Harris Tweed Hebrides, which are then mixed in blending bins using recipes and carded and spun into melange yarns, with all those colours mixed into one. These yarns are then warped using the correct colour sequence for the pattern and wound onto the beams to be delivered to the weavers. From there, the weavers weave between 50 and 300 metres of tweed by hand, a process involving pedal power, which is then collected and returned to the mill for finishing. It's at this stage where the tweed is more commonly referred to as greasy tweed. The darners then fix the broken ends or mistakes in the tweed, and it's washed and then milled, dried, cropped and pressed. The final step is then inspection, where the Harris Tweed Authority awards certification of the Harris Tweed orb in the form of a wax stamp on the back of the cloth. It is only then that the cloth can be called and sold as Harris Tweed. So as part of the Harris Tweed Authority, to keep it up and running, the independent weavers and mills pay them a kind of levy charge, so pay per metre for the certification to be able to sell this as Harris Tweed, which supports the authority, which then stamps. So every part of the business or the industry is reliant on the next in order to keep it all going and moving smoothly. So Harris Tweed can be found in workshops and in catwalks worldwide. This handmade cloth weaves a story of heritage, artisanal skill and community supplied to makers of all shapes and sizes. Some wish to share the story of Harris Tweed with their customers, but others simply buy for the quality of the cloth. It's been evident since my arrival on Lewis that there is indeed a community within a community, one that thrives on people and skills it supports. Without one, the rest would not survive. It is therefore important to keep things moving and progressing. Young people are again starting to join the industry, younger generations and new families to Harris Tweed, which is key to the survival and the support of the production of the famous tweed. At Harris Tweed Hebrides specifically, it is noticeable that younger team members are progressing up through the business with new ideas, but the same passion for tweed as those that came before them. It is a cottage industry, but today, even with COVID restraints, absences from other 21st century and other 21st century challenges, it still runs smoothly like a well-oiled machine that also contains more than a few other well-oiled machines. My current project job role came about with views to progress, innovate and become more sustainable. In the short time I've been at Harris Tweed Hebrides, it's very obvious how much progression and forward planning there is going on. Site and facility improvements have been progressing and completed over the past few years, including a new dye house, office and staff welfare facilities in the form of extension and internal renovations. There are also some plans underway for external buildings and machinery upgrades. This kind of investment is key to progressing the progression of the company and excellent in light of recent world events. So the islands are deemed as more of a remote place to live, and I've been told that this kind of life does not appeal to everyone. I am, however, at a loss how this could be. I moved out to Stornoway last February on a very snowy Saturday and proceeded to isolate for 10 days as a precaution. For those 10 days, it might have stopped raining maybe once. However, since then, I can confirm that not all days have been like those 10. I can speak firsthand of the Harris Tweed community that invited me in and have made me feel at home ever since. A few of my project focuses since I've been here and for the next year have been on fabric and fibre waste, and the way we can use our own fibre waste and suitable recycling options for waste fabrics. So we're looking at how the fibre waste can go back into the system and be used again. One option that they were currently using is dyeing black, so that covers majority of the colour waste to be used again so that we don't waste as much. And we're looking at other ways to also include it into yarns without dyeing over to preserve the strength of the fibre as well. And obviously suitable recycling options for waste fabrics. Once it's in fabric form, as an island, we have limited ways to dispose of this, but there are companies down in England and Italy are really far forward in recycling their textiles and being able to break them back down into fibre to then reuse as yarn again. We're also really lucky here because we're 100% wool. There's there shouldn't be too many difficulties for these other companies to break down our fabric and separate fibres, because we're obviously 100% wool. So that's also a bonus. We're looking at ways that wool can biodegrade as well, if that wants to be an option for somebody, so that we're not throwing anything away. It could maybe become part of your compost bin. And also, we do stand by the fact that tweed is a long-lasting garment, and we are aware of garments that have been passed down through family members and generations anyway. So our preference would be a long life garment, but also the option for the kind of biodegradable sustainability avenue might also be there as well. So we're also looking at single-use packaging, because again, we live on an island. There's a lot of shipping on and off the island. So we're looking to cut down on our single-use plastic and look at different waste percentage plastics that have already been recycled to kind of trial them. So there's trials for that already undergoing. And we're also looking at industry recognised certifications other than the Harris Tweed certification. So that one is something we require to produce tweed, but nobody else in the world requires it. So it's great to have, it's great for us and we need it, but there's other certifications out there to be able to prove that we meet all the chemical standards that everyone else does, and that we produce fabric in a fair environment, pay the living wage, and tick all the other boxes that we want people to know that we tick as well. Sustainable design also includes dye alternatives. At the moment, we're not quite, with the new dye house, we're set up for chemical dyeing, we're not quite set up for natural dyes yet, but we've been looking at the option of natural yarn colours, so cutting out dye altogether, which is another option for customers as well, who maybe don't want to have chemicals involved in some of their products. And we're looking at leftover cones of yarn and how we can use this up in-house or alternatively recycle as well. New product developments, including new structures for collections. So since I've been here, we've experienced different terminology because I've learned how to weave elsewhere. They've got their own island terminology. So it's been interesting kind of bridging the gap and then seeing how far we can push the current machinery. So there's only 4 shafts on the loom, which just means there aren't as many options for woven textile structures. But since I've arrived, we have found some that we haven't done yet. So that's been really exciting. And just the ways that some of the colours crossed have produced different structures as well. So yeah, there's with a few of us working on different designs for the collection, there's been some new things that we're hoping to launch in July at Premier Vision, which was really exciting. Yeah, also I've been involved in other unexpected things like power consumption, machinery upgrades. The machinery upgrades would support in reducing power consumption. They'd be more efficient, newer, energy saving. But also looking at ways that we can help our energy consumption. There's been new solar panels have been put in onto the new extension, but obviously as quite a large mill, well, large for the island, like large mill in the island, we have quite a lot of roof space to maybe progress that and buy more solar panels in the future. So they're currently under trial. Obviously we've got some vans that deliver the beams and things around the island to weavers. So we're looking at alternative electric vehicles as well. And also with new machines come new possibilities, potentially finer yarns, potentially different fabric finishes for customers that give us the option of offering more to our customers in present and future. I've also worked with the maintenance manager a little bit as well, looking at machine settings and the reason why they're set the way they are. Some of these are focusing on how to strengthen yarn, how to stabilize dyes, looking at different power sources, wastewater with the dyeing and the finishing processes in the mill. There's quite a lot of wastewater, and looking at ways that we can maybe harness that and reuse it in the future. So it might involve some big tanks or potentially rainwater collection systems. There are a few other businesses on the island that use rainwater collection systems already. So we've been speaking to some of them to see how that goes, because we do have a lot of rain. So that seems like almost more of a reasonable one than solar power at the moment. Yeah, so most of the above things that I mentioned, I probably wouldn't have expected to be involved in. However, I do believe being involved in them is a reflection of the skills and knowledge sharing culture that has been built within the industry. So as a woven design background, every day has been a learning day in ways that I sometimes would never have expected. But it's always exciting to find out what's happening tomorrow. So it's been amazing. And on the RGU side, it's been amazing as well. I've been working with 2 lecturers as overseeing my projects. They're my academic supervisors as well. And they've got me involved in both the Gray's School of Art side with student projects and the School of Creative Culture and Business as well. So there's fashion management in that kind of side of the university too. So we've been working on student projects with store concept designs because they've been speaking a lot about e-commerce and online retail because of the pandemic, but we've been looking at some projects with more exciting concept stores, focusing on how stores are going to be drawing people in the future to make it more of an experience shopping rather than just in and out. I could have got this online. So that's been an exciting project. There's been a few film projects as well, looking at different new ways to promote Harris Tweed, maybe not just to one demographic, and maybe involve younger people too. So we've also had a fashion and textiles second year course. We're donated dead stock fabric from Harris Tweed Hebrides, and they designed uniform, well, with the theme of uniform, they designed new designs, and they were used with some of the filming projects as well. So we're just waiting to see the outcome of that. And I believe the Aberdeen Incorporation of Tailors have also awarded some awards to some of those students for their designs. So that was really exciting as well. So yeah, they've already asked if they can do the same project next year. So I think we'll run that again as well. But yeah, so there's been a few different things going on, but it's been an extraordinarily vast role and a really unique part of the UK textile industry. So yeah, I think that's me. If there's any questions, maybe at the end, that's how we're.
That's brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Beth. I think it gives us a real flavour for a fascinating locality for research. But it's a great pleasure to welcome Lingjia Tu, who's a doctoral student in East Asian languages and cultures at Stanford. And this is a project that she's currently looking on that's a cross-media study. So she'll be speaking to us this evening about decolonizing Taiwan through craft, Yang Shuyong, and the Taiwanese folk craft movement. So thank you so much for speaking to us, Lingjia, and apologies for the slightly anxious moment, everyone, between the different presentations.
Thank you, Claire, for the introduction, and no worries at all. So, hi everyone. I'm Lingjia. I'm a second-year PhD in East Asian languages and cultures at Stanford. Today I will be presenting on Yan Shuilong, who is an artist, designer in Taiwan, and he is a promoter of the local folklore craft movement. So this is based on part of my working draft. Therefore, I welcome any questions, suggestions, advices, and critiques from all disciplines and all kinds of studies. So I will get started right away. In mid-19th century Britain, critics such as John Ruskin and William Morris initiated the art and craft movement to salvage the ethical predicament of industrial production. They aimed to re-establish harmony among architects, designers, and craftsmen, and to bring craftsmanship inherent in vernacular tradition to the production of well-designed, affordable, everyday objects. Upholding craft as an alternative to the dehumanized industrial production and the elitism of fine arts, the movement flourished in Europe and North America around the 1900s and soon spread to Asia. Nonetheless, despite its considerable influence in East Asian design and modernization, there exists scarce scholarship devoted to this subject. Even the few monographs germane to this theme largely concentrate on the Japanese Mingan movement in 1920s. Mingan means folk craft, which is a Japanese word. For instance, Yuko Kikuchi's book, Japanese Modernization and Mingan Theory, investigates the chronological development of Mingan theory against the background of Japanese modern history and global design. Heavily influenced by European art and craft movement and seeking to reinvent Zen Buddhist aesthetic ideas, the Japanese Mingan movement reveals such a mechanism of what Kikuchi calls Oriental Orientalism, which means the recurring and transferable nature of the system of Orientalism first proposed by Edward Said, whereas Orientalism, according to Said, was projected onto the Orient from the Occident. Japan absorbed Orientalist scheme and then projected its own Oriental Orientalism onto other Oriental nations and regions colonized and governed by Japan at that time, such as Korea, Taiwan, and Manchuria. And finally, through the new framework of Oriental Orientalism back at the West. So in this presentation, I seek to join Kikuchi by examining the writing and the design products by the Taiwanese designer, painter, and artist Yan Shuilong, who launched the Taiwan folklore movement in the early and mid-20th century. Born in 1903 during Taiwan's colonial period by Japan and educated in the Tokyo School of Fine Arts, Yan Shuilong was a multi-talented artist active both before and after the liberation of the island from Japanese colonialization. Before World War II, he worked closely with Yanagi Soetsu and Kanazake Takeo, both Japanese promoters of Japanese craft. And he stayed active in the Japanese-inspired Taiwanese folk craft movement. On his return from studies in Japan and France, fueled by the vision of establishing an institution of local crafts in Taiwan, he carried out colonial government-sponsored field research on the local craft in 1941. Yan's ideas blossomed after the war, and he wrote a seminal book on the crafts of the Taiwanese Aboriginal and Han people, which is called Formosa Industrial Arts. His ideas and works greatly appealed to the public and officials as well. As a result, academic and industrial institutions for craft production were founded across Taiwan during the 1950s and 60s. So in this presentation, I will look at one particular type of craft, which is the bamboo craft, because bamboo enjoys a long history as the symbol of Oriental beauty. During their stay in Japan, the modernist designers Bruno Todt and Charlotte Perry-Young highly praised the Japanese traditional crafts and architecture, and especially discovered bamboo crafts as embodying the essence of Orientalness. In a similar vein, in his 1943 trip to Taiwan, Yanagi Soetsu appropriated the rhetoric of primitive discourses from the Eurocentric modern aesthetic ideas and applied them to the Taiwanese bamboo crafts. In his career as an activist for local handicraft tradition, Yan Shuilong exhibited a long-term interest in bamboo products. In his design, Yan creatively integrated local materials and skills and modern design and aesthetics to negotiate a unique Taiwan design modernity. Yan's design of bamboo chairs, for instance, resembles the mission-style furniture that emerged in the wave of the British art and craft movement. The mission-style furniture is characterized by simple horizontal and vertical lines, insistence on fine quality, emphasis on function, and downplay of ornament. A typical example is the signature model number 332 armchair of Gustav Stickley, which we can see on the left. The back and the sides of the armchair are all composed by firm wooden cylinders. The broad slatted construction with no extra ornament demonstrates the minimalism of design in the mission-style furniture. Likewise, the bamboo furniture designed by Yan Shuilong is also made with vertical and horizontal bamboo strips, which we can see on the lower right, indicating a sense of robustness and unsophisticatedness. The craftsman meticulously selected 3-year-old osmanthus pipes, which is a type of local bamboo species, split them into slender and thin strips, and drew upon traditional methods to weave them into large diamond shapes that complies with the texture of bamboo. The pattern and color yen design in these bamboo products echoes Yanagi Soetsu's theory of design on pattern. In his 1932 article, What is Pattern?, Yanagi demonstrates the deep bond between beauty and pattern in handicrafts. A good pattern adheres to the rule of law. It is not carefree and unprincipled. The beauty of pattern is built on the principles and laws of nature. It is the beauty of numerical symmetry, Yanagi states. Yan Shuilong's design of bamboo objects resonate with Yanagi's view on good pattern that is simple, symmetrical, regulated, and natural. More significantly, the usage, the choice of the bamboo as a natural material, and the patterns abiding by the natural law in his design once again resonates with Yanagi's notion of Orientalism, which means natural beauty, simplicity, and finest quality. But I also want to call your attention that Yan Shuilong's revitalization of local bamboo and indigenous hand techniques actually complicates what Yuko Kikuchi calls Oriental Orientalism. Indeed, especially noteworthy is Yan's efforts to preserve the unique indigenous quotidian objects of Taiwan. The most typical example is the nursing mother chair, also known as the mother-child chair, which we can see on the upper right. This is a chair that can be used both by young children and adults. It commonly existed in the rural area in Taiwan during the 20th century. This chair takes into account the needs of both infants, young children, and their parents or wet nurse who might be occupied with domestic labor, thus unable to keep an eye on the children at all times. The side of the chair includes a small table and a tiny chair suitable for children aged from 0 to 3. The table serves to prevent the children from getting out of the chair and hence guarantee their safety. The front of the chair is no different from an ordinary bamboo chair and is designed for adults to sit in. Usually, rural women in Taiwan would sit in the chair when they're feeding and caring for infants and young children. After they finish feeding, they only need to turn the chair over 90 degrees, and it becomes a bamboo chair for children to sit in. The design of this nursing mother chair fully indicates the designer's meticulousness of considering the body size, the security of children and infants, and the convenience of caregivers. It demonstrates that Yan Shuilong not only values the Western modern design, but also attaches tremendous significance to local Taiwan craftsmanship and traditional everyday objects that suit the local living condition. So to sum up my presentation, Yan Shuilong's revitalization and revival of Taiwanese craft tradition could be viewed as a new intervention into the discourse of Orientalism and the art and craft movement. On the one hand, he participates in Japan's Oriental Orientalism scheme, in which both Japan and Taiwan absorbed the Orientalist element, self-Orientalized, and through the new framework, back at the West. On the other hand, however, Yan's Taiwanese folk craft movement proves to be a subversion of Oriental Orientalism. He acts in the same way how Japan acts towards the West. He assimilates the stereotype of indigenous craft created by the Japanese intellectual discourse, take up the unfinished mission of the Japanese government-sponsored promotion of local craft in Taiwan, and eventually employs the new framework as a useful weapon to fight for local economic, culture, and political independence. Thank you.